Valentine's Day is a big day for serial killers. I mean, think about it. Everyone is either stupidly happy or sad and mopey. Serial killers generally find themselves in the latter. It's depressing. It's so hard these days to find someone who's comfortable with your murderous compulsions. And that's the conclusion I came to, anyway. What can I say? I'm a 30-year-old woman, and once again alone on Valentine's Day. All my friends are getting married, having huge blowout weddings and insane bachelorette parties where they basically gloat about how much great sex they're having. Ugh. Always a killer bridesmaid, and never a killer bride. Anyway, Valentine's night, I put on my best blood-red dress and a long black coat, complete with black stilettos. I painted my lips black, did a delicate little dark smoky eye number. My dark hair is down tonight, done in gentle curls. I fluffed my hair, checked to make sure the severed head on my mantelpiece over the fireplace was set straight, and went out the door, locking it securely behind me. I walked down the sidewalk, lit by street lamps, my heels clicking satisfyingly against the concrete. It was quiet out tonight, despite the occasional drunk person wandering around sadly. I avoided them expertly, keeping to the shadows. I have a very specific destination in mind. I knew my next victim would be there. I had manipulated events to make it so. I had chosen my victim a month or so ago upon hearing some very interesting news about him. Despite his sins, he had excellent taste in bars. I saw the bar down the street, warm light and soft music permeating the air around it. I stood outside, looking into the windows. I saw him there, right on time. There was one problem, though. There was a woman there already talking to him. Shit. I breezed through the door, twisting my red lips into an enchanting smile. I sat on a stool close by to my victim, but not too close. I had to get rid of this other woman. I ordered a whiskey, developing a plan. My victim's name is Seth Bates, an executive of some company I couldn't be bothered to remember the name of. Bates had an unfortunate habit of forcing interns to suck his penis. He's a generally all-around slimy guy, which made him a particularly easy kill. My plan had been to seduce him, get him into a hotel room, and spend the night torturing and killing him. This woman here, however, was throwing a wrench into my plan. Admittedly, she was a beautiful woman. She had short red hair cut into a bob and was wearing a short dress with red flowers on it. She had a nice laugh. It sounded like bells. She was drinking a glass of Chardonnay and laughing at Bates's pitiful jokes. Eventually, she excused herself to the bathroom. I watched as Bates slid a roofie into her drink. That's when I made my move. "Excuse me," I said, sliding past him gracefully, pretending I was getting the bartender's attention.
"Well, hello there,"
said Bates in his nasally voice. I accidentally on purpose knocked over the red-headed woman's drink. "Oh, God! Whoops, I knocked over your date's drink," I giggled.
"Oh, she's not my date. We just met,"
Bates said, raking his eyes over me.
"Why don't you sit down? I'll buy you a drink."
"Why, thank you, Mr.
Bates. Seth Bates,"
he said smoothly, waving to the bartender to give me a drink. Bile started rising in my throat, but I swallowed it down. "Vanessa," I said, shaking his hand. I sat down and flirted with him, and the red-headed woman returned.
"Courtney, this is Vanessa. She wants to have some fun too,
Bates said, gesturing to me. Courtney smiled at me with daggers in her eyes. I returned the look. The three of us sat and talked, Bates slowly getting drunker and drunker.
Hey, you ladies there want to come up to my room?
He slurred. I nodded, and to my dismay, so did Courtney. Fuck, I really didn't want to have to kill this girl. She seemed nice. Too nice for this fuckwad. Either way, the three of us went giggling up to Bates' suite, making out occasionally. We got to the room and Bates fumbled with his keycard, eventually swiping us in.
Alright ladies, just gotta take a piss and then I can get down to business.
He stumbled into the bathroom. I quickly turned to Courtney. Listen, Courtney, you need to get out of here.
Why the hell should I? You seem pretty ready for a threesome down at the bar,
she said, stepping out of her heels. Look, this guy Bates is a really bad guy, I said, getting increasingly desperate.
Obviously.
Courtney reached back and unzipped her dress. I swallowed hard.
If he's so bad, why are you here anyway? Planning to kill him or something?
Of course not. I turned my back on Courtney. I silently pulled a wicked hunting knife from a sheath strapped to my leg. I turned around, but Courtney was already there, holding a pillowcase like she was about to strangle me. I blinked, unsure of what was happening. Courtney stopped in her tracks, staring at my knife.
Wait,
she said, stepping back.
Are you?
Well, when I said I wasn't here to kill him, I may have been lying, I said, lowering my knife.
Oh my god! Carl, I'm here to kill him too!
Courtney said, grinning. Oh my god! So do you, want to kill him together? Courtney blushed.
I'd love to.
A few seconds later, Bates came stumbling out of the bathroom.
Alright, ladies. Let's get to it,
he said, grinning stupidly. He started unbuckling his belt, and Courtney snuck up behind him and wrapped the pillowcase she was holding around his neck, tightening it cruelly.
What the fuck?
See you in hell, Valentine. I jammed my knife into his stomach and wrenched it up, spilling his steaming guts all over the floor. Courtney laughed, tying the pillowcase around Bates' neck like a massive bow tie.
God damn, you go right for it!
She kneeled down and ran her hands through the bloody viscera. I guess I do. I blushed. Hey, do you wanna go get dinner? Courtney smiled, standing up, blood dripping from her hands. She absently stuck a finger in her mouth and sucked on it.
Sure.
Anyway, happy Valentines.
I know I should probably start at the beginning, but truth be told, I don't know exactly how or when it started. I only know that it grew slowly over the years, inching further each day like a vine. In time, it had rooted itself deep into the recesses of my mind and coiled its darkness around me until it was everything. Even in sleep, there was no escape. My dreams were wrought with fear of faceless men and blood that steadily poured from open wounds. Meanwhile, my waking thoughts turned ever more wicked and alien, It was as if a demon lived in my head and whispered these cruelties into my consciousness. His words spoke of blood, but felt like honey. Such sweet, sticky sickness. But they were never mine. I would like to believe that after 45 years of existence, I know who I am. And this was not me. Not mine. But there it was. Blood on my sleeve. The knife in my hand. I have often wondered if the insane can fully understand the depths of their own depravity, or if an attempt at such only quickens their descent. Despite the possibility of futility, I am compelled to share my story. It was her smile. It was magnetic and genuine and kind. She wore this cherry red lipstick to emphasize the plum perfection of her lips, which only drew in my gaze more. I would go out of my way to sit in her section of the diner and to think of jokes to make before I ordered, all for a flash of that intoxicating smile. It became a daily ritual. I would arrive at 6 p.m. sharp. I would sit at the corner table next to the jukebox that never played and order the meatloaf and potatoes. I tipped well, so she was always very friendly. She would even sit with me when it was slow and tell me about her day. Those were my favorite times. But I was quiet and intimidated. I never spoke without cautiously planning out my sentences. I feared that one misstep and the true nature of infatuation would be revealed. One day, I arrived at my usual time, sat in the usual spot, but I was greeted by a different waitress. The meal went on without events, but a furious anger grew inside me. I had gone through my entire day waiting for this moment. I felt cheated. Was I just another customer to her? Did she not anticipate our interactions in the same way I did? Was the connection we had a manufactured ruse for higher tips? She was playing me for a fool. Of this I was certain. I ate quickly and walked home with these thoughts run through my head and boiled my blood. The next day, her smile returned. But it was not my smile. It had changed. It was the same contrived expression that she painted onto her face for every other twit that walked in here. The reality of the situation had been confirmed. She was my everything. To her, I was nothing. It infuriated me. That smile had shown me true affection. That smile had been the one thing in life that cared. And that stupid bitch ruined everything. My whole life, I had been worthless, looked over, and mocked. I would not have this mockery from her. Not from my smile. I needed it back. More than anything in the world, I wanted the smile to return. I spent many nights contemplating if and how I could retrieve it, and I came to one conclusion. I knew her schedule. She came in at 2 and closed the diner at 10. I went about my usual routine, but upon leaving the restaurant, I waited in a back alley for her to end her shift. She left at 10:15. I approached her as she exited through the back door.
Oh!
She exclaimed as I emerged from the shadows.
Oh, you're still here?
I said nothing. I only stared at her mouth, now in a contorted expression. It was not the smile I knew, which only encouraged my rage. I drew the knife from my pocket. Her cry for help fell on absent ears as I approached her.
Please don't!
I sat in my living room, sipping on a glass of water, rocking back and forth in my chair contentedly. My gaze was fixed on my mantle where I had placed her severed head. I had pulled back her perfect lips into the smile that cared. There it was. My smile.
Pauline was a sweet woman who lived across the street. We weren't close as kids or teenagers because she was around 5 years older than me, but our parents were friends. I think she babysat me when I was younger too. When my mother learned that Pauline was engaged, she sent me to help on the bridal shower. Poor Mom. She thought I was like that because I was too often around boys and needed to learn to be more feminine. But she's got that backward. That's when I first learned that Pauline and her soon-to-be husband had made a blood oath.
The first to die comes and takes the other as soon as they can,
she explained to me, swirling the ruby ring gently around her fingers. Isn't that too dramatic? What if you end up divorcing and marrying other people?
We won't. We are soulmates.
Her naivete made her incredibly beautiful, but it felt really wrong being 21 and thinking that I was so much more mature than a 26-year-old. I didn't pursue the matter, but she kept talking about him in a dreamy tone. Aiden would like this, I wish Aiden was here, and so on. Her dreamy tone almost made me believe that soulmates existed and that you could make the person you love the most follow you in death by just willing it. I met Pauline's friends, and we all ended up having some quality girl time. Pauline explained to us all how she believed that you can wake up in the afterlife and start controlling things with your mind. She clarified,
Of course, your memories will be hazy, but that's why we made the blood oath. So we can remember.
And how will one get the other back? I asked, entertaining her.
I like to believe that we'll both grow wings.
It was all terribly silly when I think back. But Pauline had something about her that made everyone pay attention and marvel at her words. Despite the age gap, we ended up becoming good friends. I think we were finally at an age where it didn't matter anymore. Since I was in college but lived with my parents and didn't need to work, I had a lot of spare time to accompany her to wedding dress fittings, cake tastings, and all the little things that were the world for brides. But Pauline was a pleasant bride-to-be and never freaked out. She was just thrilled about marrying the man of her dreams and wanted to make it pretty if possible. Little by little, I grew to understand her devotion to Aiden. And he was just as crazy about her, if not more. When they were together, the world felt like a brighter and warmer place, like marshmallows slowly melting over my heart. The day of the wedding came, around half a year after her bridal shower. It was neither a big nor a small wedding. It felt like both Pauline and Aiden were able to invite exactly everyone they wanted around on their happiest day. Not one more, not one less. I felt somewhat honored to be there. Still, the happiest day never came. When Pauline arrived, belated as any bride should be, there was whispering and disquiet. Aiden wasn't there yet. Her smile didn't falter, because she was completely sure that he would never ever bail on her. But I could tell she was worried. The bridesmaids, her two closest friends since high school, started making calls to try to find out if the groom had a sudden illness. Soon, they realized that Aiden's parents were there, but not his brother. His parents informed them that their other son was supposed to drive the groom as part of his best man's duties. When the devastating news came, everyone wanted to comfort her. Everyone wanted desperately to protect her precious heart, but it was too torn apart to notice anyone else. It was all too fast and scary. A sports car ran a red light straight into the mirage. The man in the passenger seat was dead on arrival. The driver was taken to the hospital, but his state was critical. It was all so hard on everyone. Aiden's brother ended up surviving, but he'll be tetraplegic for life due to severe injury on his spinal cord. As far as I know, he's also miserable, because he wished he could be the one who died. Right after the wedding that never happened, Pauline and Aiden's parents dealt with selling the house they just bought, and Pauline continued living with her parents. They both still worked office jobs, so her other friends and I started taking turns keeping her company while they weren't home. I did my best to be there for my neighbor and friend, but she wasn't there. She was living in delusion, and the only thing you could see leaking into reality was her desolation. I never saw such a deep and heart-wrenching sadness. Pauline refused to take off her wedding dress. She would spend the whole day by the window, waiting for Aiden, and the whole night crying because she missed him so desperately. Every single day. She was hopeful it was a matter of time until he woke up on the other side and remembered to bring her along. That's why she wouldn't take off the dress. He had died in his wedding suit, so it was only natural that she was up to par. Her parents and every single one of her friends tried to coax her into changing her clothes. We promised she could always keep the dress close for when Aiden came, but she knew that we didn't really believe he would. It was like promising your kid that you'd buy them a Happy Meal some other day. No one dared to penetrate her grief and force her out of the dress. She spent the day in it, slept in it, even bathed in it. Since we live in warm and arid weather, having it dry wasn't an issue. Only everything else. The once beautiful organza and silk were now ragged, grimy, and smelling. But she still refused to take it off. She started to believe that Aiden wouldn't be able to spot her in the crowd if she wasn't wearing it. It was impossible to change her mind, and even though she was seeing a therapist 3 times a week, she wasn't improving. Her mourning and PTSD were turning into a darker, more permanent mental illness. She started talking to Aiden, then explained to us that he was nearby so she could feel him coming. He was just taking a while because flying is really hard when your wings are newly acquired. We didn't believe her. Then, one morning, she disappeared for good. No one saw her leaving, and no one saw her at all after that. The only thing that we were able to find in the small grove behind the house was her filthy wedding dress. It had 2 large holes poked in the back, like the body wearing it had grown wings. After finding the dress, everyone who loved Pauline was relieved. Her mother readily admitted that she actually believed that Aiden somehow had come back to take her. Others weren't so fond of the supernatural explanation, but thinking that there was a chance that it happened brought up a sense of closure. It's not that we were happy about her death, but we conformed to the possibility of her finally finding her peace. She was an angel after all. Why wouldn't she grow wings and escape her flesh prison? The family held a beautiful memorial service in her honor, and slowly, we all started moving on with our lives. Now, you might ask what I believe in. I would laugh bitterly, because I don't have this choice to begin with. Being the person who spent the most time watching Pauline those days, it was only natural that I was the one to find her dead in the bathtub. Hiding and subsequently getting rid of her body was the hardest thing I have ever done. Tampering with her dress, though, was eerily healing. Still, I think she would be pleased to know that I faked her rapture. A romantic and mystifying death fitted Pauline way more than a suicide. I met John when I was in high school. He was a chess club nerd and I was a cheerleader. I don't know what it was about him, but for me, it was love at first sight. For him, I was a dream come true. None of my friends understood it, but I didn't care. You can't pick your soulmate. You just are. We married soon after graduation and lived happily for 15 years. When my husband was diagnosed with terminal cancer, I started making the cranes. There is a legend in Japan that if you fold 1,000 paper cranes, you will be granted one wish. While I folded the cranes, I would say the same prayer. Please make my husband healthy again. But as more cranes were made, my husband's health declined. I decorated his hospital room with all the cranes I made, hanging them from the ceiling on long strings. The nurses always commented on how pretty it made the room, and I know John loved looking at them. It was a declaration of my love for him, visible for the whole world to see. The day I finished my last crane, I gave it to him. He was so weak at this point he could barely keep his eyes open. I placed the small bird in his hand and decided to bequeath my final prayer to him. Look, John, I finally finished. He slowly turned his head to the sound of my voice and cracked his eyes open. Take it, love. I'll leave the wishing to you. I gently squeezed his hand around the paper so he could feel it. For the first time in weeks, a smile formed on his lips. Then he was gone just as quick. I wept as the doctor came to confirm that I was now a widow, gave his condolences, and left me to my grief. I thought of leaving the crane in his hand, but the idea of someone taking it and throwing it out while they prepared his body made me reach into his palm and remove it. To my horror, the sharp points of the wings, beak, and tail had pierced through my husband's fragile skin, causing him to bleed onto it. The paper, previously white, was now stained red around the edges. Before my eyes, the blood continued to absorb into the paper until there was no white left. That's when I realized, in my hand, my husband was still alive. This was a part of him, and I knew why my wish hadn't worked. I hadn't used the right materials. The paper was only part of the ritual. To have my wish granted, I needed more. It was hard to find something sharp enough to cut through my husband's belly, but once I'd opened him up, things went much smoother. By the time the nurses broke through the barricaded door, I had dipped all the strings of the cranes into his corpse, letting them absorb more of his essence, and was in the process of rehanging them from the ceiling. Their red wings looked so beautiful in the light. One of the nurses screamed and slipped on the bloody floor, staining her white uniform crimson. She looked just as lovely as my cranes. My wish didn't work this time, probably because I applied the blood after the crane was made. But I won't make that mistake again. When I make my next 1,000 cranes, I'll do it right. And this time, I'll get John back. I'm sure of it.
About a year ago, my husband and I decided to spend Thanksgiving at a cabin up north. We found it online through a website we've used in the past and booked it for a week. The owner warned us that it can be hard to get back to in the winter because of the snow. The cabin was located outside of Pine Top, Arizona. Way outside. It was 35 miles from the nearest town and 18 miles from the nearest paved road. Aaron and I weren't worried, however, since our Jeep had snow tires, and we were bringing chains just in case. We planned on starting a family the following year and wanted one last romantic holiday with just the two of us. We arrived on a Friday afternoon. We had made excellent time on the drive, as there was actually very little snow on the ground. We decided to take a tour of the cabin before we unloaded the car. The cabin, named Paradise Pine, was 3 stories tall and built into the side of a mountain. The top floor was simply the master bedroom, which was connected to a second-story patio balcony via a sliding glass door. The front door was located on the ground floor, along with the kitchen and living room, and the basement housed a washer, a dryer, and a wood furnace that heated the cabin through a large pipe that extended up through all 3 floors. Even though the views through the bay windows were beautiful, the first thing we noticed when we walked in was that the cabin hadn't been cleaned. Oftentimes, with very rural properties, the owner will offer to waive the $150 cleaning fee if you are willing to clean the place yourself before you depart. Most guests opt to do this, but in the rare occurrence they don't, the owner sends a cleaning crew. The previous tenants in this cabin had clearly decided not to clean, and also not to inform the owner that they were leaving it dirty. Since it was a holiday and a snowstorm was forecasted for early next week, we decided to clean the cabin ourselves and asked the owner to reduce our bill when we left the following Friday. We brought everything in from the Jeep and got to work with dishes and laundry. Afterwards, we made an easy dinner, opened a bottle of wine, and played a few games of billiards on the pool table in the living room. The temperature started to plummet at around 6 in the evening, and I asked my husband Aaron to go down to light the furnace in the basement. I went up to the bedroom to wash my face and change into warmer clothes. The bathroom connected to our bedroom was oddly doorless, had a broken mirror and a torn-down shower curtain. Wow, there had been some cowboys in here. They hadn't even bothered to pick the glass up off the floor before they left. I did so, carefully, regretting the stupidity of the drunken idiots who must have stayed here the week before. I took a few photos with my phone and planned to send them to the owner when we got back to town on Monday. I certainly did not want to be charged for damage inflicted by the previous tenants. I met Aaron on the ground level and told him about the bathroom.
Well, that's not the only thing that's broken. The light's out in the basement and I couldn't find a flashlight. I did manage to find the furnace, though. I squirted some of that cheap vodka your sister sent in there, and threw a match in and hoped for the best.
Seems to be working, I stammered through now chattering teeth. I can feel the heat coming through. I held my hands up to the metal pipe that wound its way around the house. Keep the basement door closed. It's freezing down there. One of our favorite things to do when staying at a cabin is to read through all the journal entries of the previous guests. Usually, it was just things like, went fishing with the kids, caught a bass, or had a barbecue, played cards with the family. But occasionally, you found something more interesting, like got drunk and set a tree on fire. We found the Paradise Pine diary and snuggled up on the couch. Aaron read aloud the first 4 or 5 entries before I decided to take over. We were about halfway through the book when we called it a night and went to bed. The following evening, we stayed up late as we'd had a long nap that day. The plan had been to go on a hike, but it had been too cold out. Luckily, the furnace in the basement was, to our amazement, still burning. We spent the whole day lazing around the living room. After dinner, Aaron practiced pool while I read aloud from the journal, starting where we left off. I read for an hour before finally arriving at the journal entry of the guests who had stayed before us. I was very interested in this one. These people had to have a good story. The writer had chosen to format his entries into dates with timestamps. There were over 6 pages, and I could already tell the handwriting sort of disintegrated as the days wore on. Wow, they must have been drunk all weekend. Look at how messy this handwriting gets. I held the book up to Aaron.
Can you read it?
He asked, spinning an 8-ball into a corner pocket. Of course. I'm great at reading other people's shitty handwriting by now. I sent him an impish grin and took another sip of wine before beginning to read. Sunday, November 4th, 3:30 p.m. Wow, what a beautiful cabin. My wife and I booked this place for 2 weeks on a whim,
and we can't believe how lucky we got. Barely made it back here with the truck. There's snow everywhere. At least a foot deep, and it's below 40 degrees outside. Thankfully, the furnace in this basement is huge, as promised by Marissa, so all 3 floors are warm and cozy. Monday, November 5th, 11:30 a.m. We're snowed in. We had wanted to run home today and grab a few things we forgot, but that is definitely not happening. The road is unmanageable, so it appears we aren't going anywhere. Looks like we will be spending most of our day inside drinking mimosas and playing poker. As you can see, we aren't too upset about it. Tuesday, November 6th, 7:25 p.m. My wife Sarah is currently cooking up a delicious roast chicken, and I'm finally going to start writing. This is the reason we came here after all, and I refuse to waste the opportunity to cure my writer's block. It's just so gorgeous here. I haven't written a damn thing. I also saw someone walking around the tree line today. I have no idea how they are surviving out there. We won't even go outside. It was 34 degrees last I checked. Wednesday, November 7th, 9 p.m. Today, Sarah and I made a snowman and snow angels. We don't get snow in Scottsdale, so we are taking full advantage of it. I haven't been able to write anything new, but I did edit the previous 2 chapters of my book. I think the beauty of this place is just too distracting. I'm kidding. Sort of. I think we may have neighbors. I was having a cigarette out on the balcony last night, and I saw someone at the tree line again. He is extremely tall, and certainly close enough to say hello, but when I waved, he walked back into the woods. We'll have to ask Marissa about that. She didn't mention any neighbors nearby. Thursday, November 8th, 1 p.m. This morning I woke up to find animal tracks all around the outside of the cabin. I don't know what sort of animal made them. The prints were the shape of a rectangle, almost like they were made by the end of a 2x4. By the time Sarah got up at 11, the snow had mostly melted, but you could still kinda see them. I think last night's snow is the last we will get while we are here. The sky is looking pretty clear. Sarah thinks I'm succumbing to cabin fever, so today we are going for a hike since it's so beautiful out. Friday, November 9th, 7 a.m. Last night someone tried to get into the house. I woke up at about 1 in the morning to the sound of banging on the front door. Not knocking, banging. I went downstairs and grabbed a pool stick. I asked who it was, and the banging stopped. I waited a few minutes and then opened the door, but there was nothing there. I started back up the stairs to wake up Sarah, as she is a heavy sleeper. The banging sounded again, more urgently this time, and from the other side of the room, on the wall next to the bookshelf. It stopped after a long minute, and I sat down on the steps and waited all night for them to try something. Nothing happened after that. Friday, November 9th, 2 p.m. I told Sarah what happened and she wants to leave. I'm not really convinced, but Sarah scares easily. I will admit I'm a bit on edge. I tried to start the car this morning, but nothing happened. I'm not a car guy and I have no idea what to do. We can't hike out, there's no signal out here, and we can't find a house phone. We talked about it and decided we're just going to wait it out here. I know people have this cabin rented out on the 16th, so we'll just have to wait the week for them. I did find a wood axe, which I'm keeping in the bedroom just in case they come back to harass us. I think it's probably a homeless person living out in the woods. There were tracks all around the house again this morning, and I'm no longer convinced they're from an animal. We'll see if they come back. Saturday, 5 a.m. Last night, the knocking was back. But it was something knocking on the sliding door to our bedroom from the second-story patio. I don't know how it climbed up there. It knocked on the window, gently, almost coaxingly. A thin curtain covers the sliding glass door, so I couldn't see what it was. The knocking finally stopped, and a full minute later it started again, becoming the loud, insistent banging of the night before. I reached over Sarah to grab the axe, bounding out of bed as she screamed. By the time I got to the sliding door, the banging had stopped. I threw back the curtain, but there was no one on the patio. It was midnight. I saw it walking away from the cabin back toward the tree line. Sarah stumbled over to the window and I showed her the retreating figure. She covered her face and cried. What we saw terrified us both. It's not a human. It's tall, maybe 10 feet, and skinny. It looks like a black stick figure, impossibly thin. It had no hands or feet, just stumps. And no face. It's just a black oval with no features. The contrast was horrifying, this tall black stick man walking through the snow. It reached the tree line and disappeared. I spent the next hour trying to calm Sarah down. She said we need to leave. I think she's right. When we were finally calm enough to lie in bed again, the silence was deafening. I felt myself slowly starting to drift off. It was out of this silence that the knocking came again, this time on our bedroom door. I jumped out of bed and grabbed the axe again. Sarah backed into a corner and screamed. By the time I threw open the door, the knocking had stopped and there was nothing there, but the front door was wide open. It can get inside the cabin. I don't know what it wants. Saturday, 5 p.m. I am terrified. My wife is terrified. Today, I considered setting the car on fire just to see if the smoke would attract someone's attention. Sarah wouldn't let me because it's our only way out. So we packed the car up instead. Maybe when the snow melts more, we'll be able to fix the car. I catch Sarah staring off a lot, and she hasn't said much since we saw the stick man. Seeing the thing, it's affected me too. I have been having migraines today. I've never had a migraine before. I want to protect my wife, but I don't know what to do. I caught Sarah staring at me almost in a trance earlier. I asked her what was wrong, and she said, "It eats us." She seemed to snap out of it pretty quick after that, and asked me why I was staring at her. She doesn't remember saying it, and we can't figure out what it means. This thing is fucking with our heads. Saturday, 10 a.m. Last night I stayed up all night. It's lightly snowing. All was quiet. Sunday, 7 p.m. I found footprints this afternoon on the upstairs balcony. The same rectangle ones the stick man has. He was outside our window again. I brushed them away before Sarah could see. It stopped snowing an hour ago, and it's twilight now. I can see him in the tree line. I saw him turn around and walk back into the woods. His profile is as thin as a piece of paper. The stick man came back, though. I think we're going to die here. Monday, November 12th, 9 a.m. Last night, I went out on the balcony at around 8 for a cigarette. I heard a noise behind me and turned to see the stick man on the roof 5 feet above me. I ran back inside to grab the axe and screamed at Sarah to arm herself. I turned around to run back outside and heard the stick man running above me on the roof in the same direction. When I got outside, the thing was gone. I saw it running off into the trees again, but it was different. It was taller. I think there's more than one. When I got back inside, Sarah had locked herself in the upstairs bathroom. She was hysterical and kept saying she was going to die here. I tried to give her the pool stick, but she wouldn't open the door for anything. I sat on the bed and waited. At some point, Sarah must have fallen asleep because all was quiet. It was then that I first heard it walking around in the kitchen. I backed away from the bedroom door, courage suddenly failing me. It was in the house. I waited for more sounds from the kitchen, but none came. After a few minutes, I finally heard a thump. It was on the stairs. It was climbing the stairs. Thump, Slowly, but loudly. Thump. I banged the bedroom door from my side and told it to leave us alone. Thump. Sarah was screaming again, sobbing. It could hurt me, but I would never let it hurt my family. It stopped when it got to the top step. I could feel it on the other side of the door. It didn't make a noise. I tried to think of a strategy that would give me the upper hand if it attacked. I finally decided that if I threw the door open, it would knock the stickman down the stairs. On the count of 3, I turned the handle and kicked the door. It swung open freely, and I saw the black stickman still down on the landing of the stairs facing me. It was more than 10 feet tall. I was paralyzed with horror for several long seconds when it started running up the stairs at me without warning. I stumbled back into the room as fast as I could as I realized that death at the hands of the stickman was more than death. Worse than death. It ate you. It kept you. It stopped at the top step and dipped its head through the door, taking 2 steps into the room. It was just a tall, black shadow, almost more of a dense absence of light than a solid black. Realizing the axe was still in my hand, I moved between the stickman and the bathroom door. I raised the axe to attack, and at that moment the stickman screamed. It was unlike anything I had ever heard before. I wanted to hold my hands over my ears as I felt an ebbing thunder in my brain. I heard the mirror shatter in the bathroom from the sound. I thought of Sarah. With the last ounce of strength I had, I ran at the thing, axe high, and brought it down in the creature's chest over and over again for what felt like forever, but was probably no time at all. It threw me aside, and I heard my wife scream. That's the last thing I remember before I passed out. When I opened my eyes again, it was mid-morning. My wife was gone. The bathroom door was gone. And the axe was gone. I looked for Sarah all morning. I walked deep into the woods. I searched for miles. I am going to sleep for a few minutes and then go back out into the woods to find her. I hope I meet the stickman. If Sarah is dead, I want to be dead too. I think that's what it wanted all along. Monday, November 12th, 6 p.m. It's getting dark and hard to search the woods. In my mind, all I hear is her voice. It eats us, over and over again. What has it done to her? I couldn't save her. After everything, I couldn't save her. When I first realized I had forgotten my medication, the snowstorm stopped us from leaving. But when I saw the stickman, I thought it had been a blessing in disguise. I needed to be clear-minded and alert to protect my family, and I couldn't do that when I was on haloperidol. But it didn't matter in the end anyway. I couldn't save her. The car started on the first try this morning. It's letting me leave. I'm going to drive around to the other side of the mountain and walk back toward the cabin. Maybe I'll find the stream. Maybe I'll find Sarah. It would be useless to stay another day. The stickman is gone. I know it in my heart. And it's below freezing, and the furnace has burned out, the firewood is gone. If I find her, I'll come back and write in this book.
My only friend now. Aaron had stopped playing pool long ago, and the wine hadn't been touched since I'd started reading. We stared at each other as the last line echoed around the cabin. We both seemed to wake from our paralyzed state at the same time. I threw the book across the room, and Aaron backed up into the bookcase, saying,
Jesus.
"This is fake, right?" I asked as I stood up. I didn't need the glass of wine anymore. I needed the bottle.
I don't know, Linz. I don't think so.
The guy said he was a writer. He probably just wanted to write a scary story for other guests, although he really crossed the line into downright disturbing. I took a sip of wine and turned around to see Aaron eyeing the stairs warily. You can't be serious, Aaron! It's creepy as shit! I agree, but come on! Almost like he didn't hear me, Aaron started ascending the stairs. I don't know what he wanted to see up there, but I put the wine down and followed suit. By the time I got into the bedroom, Aaron was sliding the glass door open. I followed him out onto the balcony. You could see the tree line from the patio very clearly. I searched the woods for any movement, but saw nothing. I turned to say something to Aaron and found him studying the roof. He threw a wild look at me and walked back inside. I followed him in. Aaron paced around the room. What? I was starting to get annoyed.
It's all just like in the story. You can see the tree line, the fields, and the roof from the balcony. And look.
He pointed to the attached bathroom.
There are hinges, but no door. There should be a door. It's a bathroom. And the mirror.
What? Was it shattered by the stickman's scream? He was starting to scare me. Aaron was usually the most logical person I knew.
The stick man? Did you even pay attention to what you read? There was no stick man.
No shit.
No, I mean, there never was. His last entry about the medication. Now they got snowed in and couldn't go back for it. Haloperidol, it's used to treat schizophrenia. Lindsay, go read it again. The entire thing is him slowly succumbing to psychosis. Page by page. Hell, even his wife knew it was happening.
This is madness, Aaron. I walked into the bathroom and looked around. You think someone died in here 4 days ago? Aaron shook his head.
I don't know. I think it's a possibility. The shower curtain is torn down, the mirror is broken. It certainly looks like there could have been a struggle in here. And the door, the axe, both missing.
The logic of his conclusions began to dawn on me. Oh my god. If this is real. Aaron, we cleaned this place top to bottom when we got here. If there was a murder, we've destroyed all the evidence.
We didn't know. We didn't know that somebody died here.
We still don't know, Aaron. Where's the body?
I don't know. Maybe it's buried out in the woods.
We need to leave. We need to go and get help. Let's take the book to the police and tell them what we found when we got here. Just to be safe.
Okay. Jesus, this guy could come back any time. Let's get out of here.
We had just started down the stairs when another thought occurred to me. I stopped on the landing. Aaron? He turned around.
Yeah?
He said the fire in the furnace had burned out. Did you put firewood in when you lit it?
No, it was almost pitch black. I couldn't see any firewood.
But we've been burning that furnace for almost a day. I could see the implication slowly dawning over Aaron's face. What have we been burning, Aaron? He ran for the basement door, and I followed. When he opened the door, I can't describe to you what came up from below. It was a hot, pungent, heavy air. I stood on the top step as Aaron descended into the basement.
The axe is down there.
I took a deep breath and followed him down. I stopped on the bottom stair, refusing to go any further. It was still very dark, but for the light coming down the stairs and a soft orange glow in the back of the room. Aaron knelt in front of the stove door. He looked over at me and I nodded. Aaron slowly turned the handle and pulled open the furnace door. The fire inside lit his face, and after a moment, the horror expressed there told me everything I needed to know. They found Jason Harding less than a month later. He had hung himself out in the woods, 50 yards from the cabin. In fact, he had been hanging there when we pulled up on Sunday, the 18th of November. I've often wondered if he hung himself because he wanted to be with his wife, or if he hung himself because he realized what he'd done. I hoped it was the latter, because I hated him so much. Not for his mental illness, not for his crime, but for what he did to us. Sarah Harding had burned in that furnace for a day, and for a day we had breathed in every atom of her body. We had kept warm by the flesh of her corpse. Why didn't it smell? We were given a very scientific explanation, citing high burning temperatures, years of pine infusion, and the pieces of wooden door burning in there with her. But it didn't stop the nightmares. The case made headline news, at least locally. Aaron and I managed to prevent our names from being associated with Paradise Pine through an anonymity clause in our witness statements. We never told our friends or families we were involved. We tried to forget. Paradise Pine still stands today. It is available for rent, although the name has been changed. The owner insisted on keeping the cabin journal, so the police tore out Jason Harding's pages and gave it back to her. It still sits on the table next to the bookshelf, and tenants still read it and write in their own experiences. Sometimes, I wonder if people see those torn pages and wonder what was written on them and what happened to merit their disappearance. I guess they'll never know that the cabin they're standing in is actually the Paradise Pine.
I was built to last with the webs I'm weaving. I could change the past with all I'm achieving. Got my foot on the gas, never stop competing. If you break my glass, then this life's gonna end.
I wanna be the best in the game, invest in my name. Check no restraints, I'm obsessed with the pain. I ingest, I retain, assess and I change. Possessed by the thought I'll be free one day from society's restraints. Money, clout and fame, mud, disease, a plague. We all love to hate, have to play the game, have to make a name. All our insecurities are on display. This is war with the enemy, think that it was meant to be. Living in a time where disease is on every screen. I won't let them fester me, I know most are festering. Negativity is a plague for the mentally weak. No mercy, all I got is working. Never stop searching, never quench the thirsty. I'm toxic and psychotic, with this logic you can't stop it. It's been chronic since I was a boy, so neurotic and chaotic.
Built to last with the webs I'm weaving. I could change the past with all I'm